One of our speakers at our 22nd annual National Worldview Weekend, Friday night, October 3rd, Saturday, October 4th, here in beautiful Collierville, Tennessee. It's a nice community, great hotels, restaurants. The theater belongs to our town. We're renting it, only 350 seats. Alex Newman is going to join me. He'll be one of the keynote speakers, along with Gordon Chang, Sidney Powell, Chris Martinson, Mark Mitchell, and so many others. Dr. Andy Woods, Hadia. Going to be quite the lineup. WorldviewStore.com to get your tickets. Check out the hotels to stay in. If you want to join us for our foundation banquet on Thursday night, that's an option. All of it's at WorldviewStore.com. Well, the largest teachers union in the United States erases Jews from the Holocaust. Yeah, that's right. Here we go. The nation's largest teachers union plans to promote a version of Holocaust remembrance that does not mention the Jews, according to its 2025 handbook, which references, quote, victims of the Holocaust from different faiths, end quote, and teaches that Israel was founded through, quote, forced, violent displacement and dispossession, end quote. That's what its most recent guide for members shows. Apparently, they've scrubbed the internet, but we have a copy. Many of you have a copy. The handbook, it was saved by somebody out there, and it's spreading all over the internet. The National Education Association, a group I've been writing about since my second book in 1993, and a whole chapter in my book in 95. This is a disgusting group of people. I mean, you go look at their resolutions. Anti-parent, anti-God, anti-Bible, anti-prayer, anti-parental authority, anti-America, pro-UN, pro-open borders, pro-LGBTQ, pro-everything that is contrary to a Christian worldview and a constitutional republic. Alex Newman, welcome to the broadcast. Thanks for joining us.
Great to be here. Thank you for having me, Brannon.
Is that a true statement I just made there?
It absolutely is. And actually, I have the handbook as well, and I've spent some time going through it. It is easy to see why they took it down. I mean, it is so full of absurdities. It almost makes your head spin. It's like if somebody was going to say, hey, how do we make the NEA look as bad as possible? How can we make them look as out of touch and insane as we possibly can? Let's make a handbook and pretend like it comes from the NEA and make them look totally crazy. That's what this thing is. I mean, radical promotion of the gender ideology. It says all children need affirmation of gender identity and sexual orientation beginning in the earliest grades. No opt-outs from the LGBT nonsense. Boys should be allowed to go into girls' bathrooms. Men should be allowed to go into girls' bathrooms. We need more equity. We need more anti-racism. We need more social justice. Parents are bad, by the way. We need parental limits on parental oversight over the curricula, decisions of schools. Any legislation that increases parental rights over what's happening in the schools needs to be restricted and stopped. They openly call for regulations and crushing alternatives to the public school system, especially homeschools. It just goes on and on. You got to kill babies, fundamental right to murdering your babies. There should be no restrictions on any murder of any unborn child at any stage in the pregnancy. It could be 8 months and 3 weeks. You should be allowed to murder your baby. Illegal immigrants, they need all the taxpayer-funded benefits that everybody's supposed to be getting. I mean, you can't even say enough bad things about this, Brannon. It's crazy. The climate change stuff is all in there. And, you know, they don't even mention once in there that less than 1 in 3 of their victims are even proficient in any core subject. So, I mean, this should tell you everything you need to know about this so-called education system that is literally destroying the youth of our country.
And of course, you and I know from all of our years of writing and speaking on it, that the NEA, going back to the 1930s, was promoting the United Nations, globalism. They were a pro-Marxist organization. I mean, this group has just gotten worse and worse and worse, of course. But you and I know this. What do you think made them pull this document?
I think they're pretty concerned right now, Brandon, that so many people are paying attention. In the past, parents were largely clueless, largely weren't asking questions. They were listening to, the big networks, and more recently, maybe some of the cable news providers. But the media landscape has shifted now, and there are tens of millions of parents across this country, if not more, who are paying attention now, who are very upset. Groups like the Moms for Liberty, the Moms for America coming out. You've got massive exodus from the government schools. People are going to alternatives. I work closely with Classical Conversations. I mean, they've got 135,000 plus students now, bigger than almost any school district in the country, for homeschooling, right? And so they're seeing this. They're seeing that parents are fleeing the system. They're seeing that it's now becoming acceptable to expose and oppose the government school establishment, and they're panicking. And so this is what they truly believe. I mean, it's probably a watered down version of what they truly believe, but they're now realizing that, hey, the rest of the country doesn't think like this. In fact, they think we're crazy. And so they're trying to disappear it. Fortunately, it was too late. The thing was already out. But this is just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to this extremism. As you know, Brandon, I've got a whole chapter on the NEA in my book, Indoctrinating Our Children to Death, that came out last year. And my colleague Sam Blumenfeld wrote a whole book on them back in before I was born in the 1980s, NEA, Trojan Horse in American Education, where he showed that they were literally run by communists. I mean, actual communists who wanted a communist world government, who openly called for in their own publications getting rid of private property, subsuming all the nations of the world under a global school board. I mean, they've been out of the closet on this for so long. The big difference now is people are finally paying attention.
And they went after homeschooling in their latest document, which anyone watching tonight says, well, I'm not a big homeschooler. I don't want to homeschool. Fine, you don't have to. But if you believe in parental authority, freedom of religion, then you have to be one that stands up and says, well, maybe I don't want to homeschool my kids, but I want people to have the freedom to do that, because an attack on parental authority is an attack on freedom of religion. And I'm for a free system, a free society based on the character and nature of God. I'm not for a communist state. And when you have no freedom of speech, freedom of religion, no parental authority, when the kids belong to the state, you're living in a communist state. So I say to everybody, whether you access homeschooling or not, you should defend it, because it's not about homeschooling. It's about religious freedom and parental authority and fighting a communist regime. And I understand in this document, they're saying all these homeschool parents have got to be licensed teachers. Is that right?
Yeah, and they've been saying this for years, Brandon. It just gets more extreme with every year that passes. But yes, they want to impose so many regulations that it becomes impossible for a parent to educate their own child. I consider this a hill to die on, right? I mean, God entrusted those children to me. When I read the scriptures, it is crystal clear. My wife and I are responsible for the education, the upbringing, the discipleship of our children. And if we choose to delegate some of that responsibility and some of that authority to a private school, even a government school, which I think is a terrible idea. In fact, I would even go as far as saying it's probably sinful in this day and age. But if we choose to entrust that to friends at church, a homeschool co-op, grandma, whatever the case may be, we are still the ones responsible. But if you look at the NEA's worldview, parents are the enemy. And this is coming from the highest levels, Brandon. Just last week, the Trump administration announced that we're getting out of UNESCO. If you look at UNESCO's vision on this, they've been very, very clear. Children belong to the state. In fact, their 2022 education monitoring report, where they talked about how they can use free money to rope in all the non-state education providers into the government system, they describe parents as stakeholders and vested interests to be overcome by government. And you look at the people who are leading this crusade in this country. People like Elizabeth Bartholet, who leads the Child Advocacy Project at Harvard Law School. She's a total lunatic, lots of cats, no children. A true story, right? And she's going to protect your children from you, her and her cats. You've got her sidekick, I guess the Robin of the Batman and Robin, James Dwyer, down at William and Mary. I've got this guy on video saying there's no such thing as parental rights. The only reason he says there is a parental relationship, a maternal or a paternal relationship with a child, is because the state, in its benevolence, confers that upon us, and it can be revoked at any time. These people are raging totalitarians. They would fit right in with Joseph Stalin and Chairman Mao and Pol Pot and the rest of the mass murderers. Of course, they don't have the ability to act on their fantasies in this country yet, thank God, but that's where they would like to go.
Yeah. And I am increasingly of the belief that if things have not drastically been changed and fixed back to a solid constitutional republic foundation at the end of President Trump's second term, that we're at that point really at the end. We cannot go to a uniparty candidate. We can't go to some Marxist. We can't. And I believe that after we have tried everything, if we cannot see a return to state rights, a limited federal government, I've been saying it over and over. The fact that we talk about the federal government so much shows you we're not in a constitutional system. Because if the Constitution was being applied and practiced, we would rarely talk about the federal government because it would have such little bearing on our day-to-day life. It's like you would hardly ever talk about it because everything would be concentrated at the state and more appropriately at the local level. There'd be such little government. Government's not something we would all be talking about. Rarely.
That's right.
Can you imagine? There really would not be talk radio. Because what would most
there'd be no more
about?
Lobbyists.
No.
Right? There'd be no more lobbyists. There'd be no reason to go lobby.
No.
It would be a wonderful, wonderful thing. But William Penn, the first governor of Pennsylvania, said something really profound. He said, if we will not be governed by God, we will be governed by tyrants. And that's the situation we find ourselves in today. Americans have tried to break the moral restraints that God has imposed on humanity for our own benefit, by the way. Kind of like in Psalm 2, let's cast the cords away from us and let's do whatever we want. We'll conspire against the Lord and his anointed. And it has produced, inevitably, an overbearing government, a tyrannical government that now threatens even the most fundamental human liberties and institutions like family. Who would have thought 100 years ago that we'd be talking about the largest union in the country that educates somewhere upwards of 80% of our children, openly declaring war on parents, openly claiming that men ought to be in little girls' bathrooms, openly claiming that we need a world totalitarian system. People wouldn't have been able to believe it, and yet here we are. So you're right, Brannon. I think you're absolutely right. If we don't set the ship right, at least on the right course, or moving in that direction by the end of this term, and I don't think political means are enough. I think this is at its core a spiritual issue. If Americans don't repent, if Americans don't turn back to God, if Americans don't open up their Bibles to see how we became great in the first place, absent some sort of miraculous divine intervention, I think it probably is over for our country. And it pains me to say that. I'm as patriotic as the next guy.
I agree with you. And I think at that point, the last thing is not a civil war, which I don't want to see that, is civil secession. Where maybe Florida, Alabama, Georgia, Tennessee, Mississippi, Arkansas, maybe Missouri, whichever want to join, and say, we're out. You guys have breached the contract. This is not what we agreed to, and we're out. There is no way and I've said it again, I've said it before, I'll say it again. There's no way for the worldview of most people in the state of Tennessee and Florida, even people that are not far right, just people who are in the center, there's no way for their worldview to have any kind of synthesis with the worldview of the leadership of California, Oregon, Washington State. There is no common ground. The Overton window has moved so much, there's no common ground. So why are we trying to force a union when there's nothing that unifies us anymore?
Yeah, it's a very good question, Brannon, and it's something that we need to be thinking about and praying about. I would hate to see the United States break apart. In fact, I think the totalitarians would love to see that because the United States is so powerful militarily and economically that it has been, in a very real way, an obstacle to tyranny. But if our option is either submit to total lawless government and give up control of our children, give up control of our ability to produce and dispose of our wealth, give up our most basic rights, or leave the Union, it's a no-brainer. I mean, nobody wants to see that, but if those are the choices we're left with, the idea that we can submit to an all-powerful totalitarian government that won't respect our most basic God-given rights is ridiculous. The American people cannot stand for that, and if it means the Union has to break apart, that may be the least bad option.
Look at this. For those who think that he was making it up when he said that the National Education Association, who apparently just scrubbed their 2025 handbook, but thankfully, Alex, myself, and many of you now have copies of it. If you thought he was exaggerating when he talked about them promoting communism, Marxism, the Soviet concepts, here's from my book, 1995, Reclaiming a Nation at Risk. On June 29th, 1938, folks, the New York Herald Tribune published a story of the NEA convention being held in New York City and reported, quote, Dr. Goodwin Watson, professor of education at Teachers College, Columbia University, begged the teachers of the nation to use their profession to indoctrinate children to overthrow conservative reactionaries, directing American government and industry. He declared that Soviet Russia was one of the most notable international achievements of our generation, end quote. And I could show you all kinds of other resolutions that they were working on, calling for the ratification of the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child, which meant you could not take your child to church with you, by the way. And if you violate your children's rights, you would gain access to an attorney and the courts for your child to sue you. Your child would have an appointed attorney to sue you. This is, though, back to 1938. And we can show all kinds of quotes. In fact, even a 1940 study, a California Senate committee showed that the Rockefeller Foundation, many of these foundations, were funding the textbooks in America that were promoting collectivism, socialism over individuality. This is a long documented deal here. Closing comment?
That's exactly right. I encourage people to get informed on this. It is one of the most critical issues. So check out thenewamerican.com, check out libertysentinel.org, get this information and distribute it to others. And thanks, Brandon, for having me on, and thanks for all that you do.
Thank you. Alex Newman, and he'll be a keynote speaker this fall, folks. Worldviewstore.com, and visit his website, libertysentinel.org, libertysentinel.org. You know, if you want to get a copy of my book, Reclaiming a Nation at Risk, you don't need to go buy it. You don't need to go buy any of the 16, 17 books I've written. They're all available for you, free of charge. And you're a member of our vault, worldviewtube.com/vault, worldviewtube.com/vault. So much history there that we need to remember. We'll be right back after this break. Hello, I'm Brannon Howse. I want to thank you for all your support at WVWFoundation.com that helps make possible pushing out 24/7 content for free. Without your support, we'd have to put it all behind a paywall. But thanks to you and your support through our foundation, we're able to push it out for free as a broadcast service and broadcast ministry of WVW Foundation. Please consider going there and setting up an automatic monthly contribution, or go there and make an occasional contribution. If you prefer to support us through the mail, you'll find our mailing address there at wvwfoundation.com. You can also call and make your contribution over the phone by calling 901-825-0652. That's 901-825-0652. Again, all these details are available at wvwfoundation.com. Thank you for your support as we try to help people around the world understand the times through the lens of a Christian worldview.